Welcome in, everyone. We are back again with JNN News Network streaming this week with a special broadcast to bring to you Week 7 fantasy results. We are excited to bring this back. This is the first week that we've done results since we officially announced the return of HK Fantasy. I am joined here by my special co-host, Mikey, once again. Say hello again, Mikey.
What's up?
Mikey's excited to be here.
You're
I'm excited to be here. We're trying to take advantage of this little halftime that we have in the Georgia-Bama game, which, quite honestly, Mikey, has been a very boring game to watch.
News fest.
It's a nice halftime score, if you know what I mean. But other than that, there's really not much to write home about in this game. Jamison Williams' knee probably wishes the game had gone a little differently, but other than that, pretty good.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, both teams have more points than the Colts did against the Jaguars. So, I mean, that's if you want to look at the bright side of things. But, yeah, snooze fest so far.
Sure, absolutely.
Especially compared to the first game. The first game, there was a lot of big plays. This one, not so much.
I mean, you kind of knew it would be this way. You think that Saban and Kirby have a chance to feel each other out 3 weeks ago. So, I mean, they know what they want to do. So, anyway, to get to the important stuff while you're all here, Week 7 fantasy results. So we're streaming from the PC today because we have results to show you. We're going to do it a little bit differently than we used to do. I used to just take screenshots of the spreadsheet and post them in the fantasy channel, but we're going to do something a little bit more, a little bit different this time. Because of my Madden's capabilities, I'm able to do QB rankings, running back rankings, wide receiver rankings, and tight end rankings. So we're going to go through the rankings of every player that was in any lineup, and so we can see exactly how well people are doing, which is kind of, I think, going to be a unique feature. We're going to try to do these podcasts a little bit shorter than we used to in the old days. We used to clump together multiple weeks and do a 30-minute to an hour-long podcast. We're going to try to do these quick-hitting 10 to 15-minuters moving forward and try to do 1 week at a time, just so we can get these results out as fast as possible. I got some good feedback on the podcast from last week. Multiple people reached out and said they enjoyed how short it was, to the point it was, so we're going to try to do that here. So, without further ado, Mikey, I guess we'll get into the winners, and I'm going to switch over tabs here. Boom! Your Week 7 winner is Kevin Commissioner KK. Kevin Commissioner KK with 103 points, finished in first place. Your second place finisher is TBK with 99 points. And Mikey, who's that third place person right there?
I don't know, man. I say this is fake news. Can we get a recount here?
Stop the count.
Let's take this to the Supreme Court.
Stop the count.
I don't buy this. These ballots they're fraudulent. I saw a lot of suitcases going inside the building.
That's right.
Recount.
That is fake news, sir. This is a above the board process. We are completely open and honest with our counting, and it just so happens that you lost by 0.3. You hate to see it, but you know it happens. So new features this year. You can see we have a table right here of how everybody finished. We had 19 players this week, which is crazy. I think that's probably the most that we've ever had for an HK Fantasy, which is not surprising being it's the first time back, but very good to see. I will say participation was down for Week 8. I even forgot to post a Week 8 lineup, so I don't know if we're going to continue to have 19 people play, but it's nice to see. Overall, what do you think of these scores, Mikey? Do you think they're high, low?
I think they're pretty low. Yeah, I think they're pretty low.
Yeah. I remember last year, I thought we used to have people that were getting 115, 120 on the regular, and some people winning weeks with 140, 150. But I also don't know how my Madden is tracking these. I don't know if they're using a different format. I think they're taking off points for interceptions, so I think there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, you also have to factor in maybe about 10 points-ish for maybe a kicker here or there. So maybe Kevin's at 110.
Well, we added 5. We still have 5 players, and now your 5th player is a flex player rather than a kicker. So,
good point. Yeah. So
I expect the scores to be up a bit, but they weren't. So,
they should be higher. They should be higher.
That maybe we'll see it going forward. We'll see people as they kind of get used to what's going on. I also think it was kind of a low-scoring week in the league. We didn't have many people truly popping off, but we'll get to that later. I want to give a big shout out to Jabbar. Jabbar was the first person to submit a lineup, and he fucked it up. He only posted 4 players, so that's impressive. Also, watch out for your bye weeks, people. Several people posted bye weeks. Rebel had a person on a bye week. Johnny Sins had a bye week. Joe had a bye week. Guts had a bye week. make sure your players that you're picking are actually playing that week. It's pretty important.
Yeah, I would say that's very important. You want points, and you can't have a player that's not playing, because
Right.
otherwise it's a 0.
Exactly. So going to
That's
the
about
winning
as simple
lineup
as it gets.
What's that?
I said that's about as simple as it gets.
I agree. So going to the winning lineup this week, you're going to see that Kevin Commissioner KK is right here with his 103 points. He was carried by Aaron Rodgers, who had almost 40 points. Aaron Rodgers is, of course, not the Packers quarterback. He is the Panthers quarterback this year, hosted by Senzu. And Senzu really carried the torch for KK. He had DJ Moore with 28.9, Rodgers with 39. Kenneth Nwangwu, who was in a lot of lineups, had a pretty average week. Same for Jonathan Taylor, but because everybody picked them, it doesn't really make a difference because it's kind of a wash. Everybody has a piece of Kenneth or Jonathan Taylor, so it didn't end up being consequential for KK. And then TBK had his lineup. He had Watson instead, and he also had DJ Moore. He got a good showing from the Miami tight end who we called out on the last podcast, Brandon Watson, I think his name is, with 22 points that really carried the day. But that's really all the difference there was. You had Najee Harris in your flex, and just didn't work out. It was a good pick, but you came up 0.3 short, which happens.
Yeah, it is what it is. I will say the good thing about this is that once a week 1 gets in, a week 2 gets in, you start seeing players that weren't picked heavily, right, in the first week or when we start the fantasy or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But like example, Aaron Rodgers barely picked. Kevin, that was the difference maker. Right, and now more people are probably going to be like, all right, well, I'm going to pick Aaron Rodgers because Senzu has him and went off with him.
Yeah, especially considering how well Senzu's playing.
Yeah. But things can switch. Matchups, a lot of things can happen. So we'll see.
Absolutely. So we're going to go to rankings next, and we're going to go through rankings for all 4 positions that play. So what we're going to do is we're going to show the QB rankings here. It's going to list out who was the QB1, QB2, QB3, QB4, QB5 of the people in lineups. So you see this column F, it says in a lineup. These are the only quarterbacks that got picked. We had 19 lineups submitted and only 5 quarterbacks were picked. But the interesting thing here is if we open it up and we show players that weren't picked, Russell Wilson was QB2. He had 28 points for Josh. He was in 0 lineups. Patrick Mahomes, killing it, 18 points, 0 lineups. Jameis Winston, who was picked in one of the lineups, finished QB 20. So the whole point here is to show that you don't just have to pick the same 2 people every other week in order to get points. You can vary it up and you're still going to get there. And remember what we said about fading. Look at this. How many lineups? KK was the only person with Aaron Rodgers, and he ends up winning the week because he went out on a limb and he didn't pick Deshaun Watson or Lamar Jackson like everybody else did. And it ended up being the difference maker for him. So as we go through, I want people to take into account the fact that you don't have to pick the same person, because that's something I'm seeing right now with the posts in week 8, week 9. It's just a lot of repeats. Let's try to see if we can mix it up a little bit.
And if not, Jern, it brings the question: do we start to going from you cannot pick the same player in duplicate weeks to maybe setting a certain number for the season, right? So when we start fantasy and say you can only pick that one player 3 times the season, maybe 4 times the season, right?
Sure.
And
I
that
think
would
it would
make it a little bit more interesting.
I think it would make it a lot more interesting. I think it would make strategy come into play. That's something that we might have to consider depending on how these lineups shake out. I think week 9 there's been a little bit more of a variation, but I think after this podcast specifically, we're probably going to see people trying to mix it up. Just for the record, I will post this spreadsheet in the fantasy tab, so that if you guys want to look at the stats yourself, you're welcome to. You can kind of do some research, study yourself, and then use that how you will. But that's for quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers QB1, Russell Wilson QB2, Deshaun Watson QB3, Lamar Jackson, who was picked in 9 lineups, was only QB4. So if you picked him, you kind of got faded. For running back rankings, we're going to running back rankings. Out of all the running backs picked, there was only 6 running backs picked, and that's crazy because we have a flex position too. So only 6 players in 19 lineups at the halfback position got picked. The most picked player was Kenneth Nwangwu. He was in 12 lineups, and he got 13 points. For the week, you'll see on the left-hand column here, he was running back 15. Jonathan Taylor, who was in 8 lineups, was running back 25. All right, so if you're picking these players, your week is in shambles essentially, unless everyone else picked them, which they did. But Najee Harris, who was picked by Mikey, you were 0.3 away from getting a placement with this great flex pick that nobody else picked.
Yeah, and I'm surprised no one else picked him because he's been going off. So
if there's one thing that Joe does, he likes to run the ball. So remember, Najee is not a Steeler; he's a Bear.
And then you almost have to think something. You know what, Jern? You would almost have to think the 1 week that we start fantasy, Cheese Dev, who never feeds his running back, leads all running back in fantasy.
Right.
It's coincidental.
Interesting.
Right?
Get out our aluminum foil hats. Get out our aluminum foil hats for sure. But if we switch over and we look at all the hiddens, Raymond Calais is halfback 1 this week with 42 points. So, if you look at the disparity here, there's a lot more than just Kenneth Nwangwu and Jonathan Taylor to pick from the running back position. And it's interesting, you can look over here on column O and you can see all the receiving points. And you'll notice the guys at the top are guys that are catching lots of balls. You got at least 12 points from your top 5 running backs. That's I think that's pretty significant moving forward. Who's getting those checkdowns and who's getting the touchdowns in the pass game? So are you going to go with?
I do have an interesting question. How many receiving points did flat Jonathan Taylor have this week, Jern?
Oh, well, I have to go down the rankings to find. There he is, all the way down to 25. Oh, he only had 2.2 points receiving, 1 catch for 12 yards.
Interesting. Okay.
Who did you play
all right,
week 7?
Moving on.
Who did you play week 7?
Moving on.
Who did you play week 7?
Rebel Raiders.
Wow. What happened? Why didn't you throw the flats, Mikey?
Hey, sometimes you gotta follow the game plan. You just gotta, coach designs a game plan. You just stick through it. You come out victorious.
That's fair enough. So yeah, I wanted to point out, Calais. I don't know if Calais is going to be a staple moving forward. Obviously, I don't have a full season of stats to go off of, so I don't know if he's been doing this the whole season. But look at these names at the top. My boy Brandon Peterson, big week from Jern's running back. I wanted to give him a shout out for having a dynamite week. But don't rely on the same 2-3 guys every week to take you to fantasy promised land. Wide receiver rankings, we had similarly the same issue. 19 players and only 6 individuals at receiver got picked. You had 10 people picking DJ Moore, and then after that, that's pretty much it. Most people picked a running back as their flex, and after that, DJ Moore, it was really slim pickings. You had the rookie for Chunk up there, Edison, who actually finished with a great week, 29-7, and DJ Moore 48-9. The other ones that were picked, I thought the Lions receiver Walls was a good pick that week, but he ended up flopping. He was in 1 lineup. I think he's going to be in more lineups moving forward, but we'll have to wait on that.
Yeah, receivers, right? Obviously, you got more positions, you got more guys. I'm just. We'll have to play by ear. We'll see if it's the same 5 to 6 guys getting picked every time. I think it'll be interesting because you can get a lot of points from these guys. I mean, only 2 guys in the top, counting down here, maybe 15, right, that were actually picked. That's a lot of.
Right, so to your point, there's a lot of guys that are available, a lot of guys you can pick. I think you'll see it when I open this up to this. Not in a lineup, guys that were not picked in a lineup. The first thing that jumps off the page is Terrace Marshall Jr. for Senzu. Everybody's picking DJ Moore, but Homeboy got 63.7 points, 13 catches, 226 yards, and 4 touchdowns, and a rushing touchdown on top of that. That's crazy. But he wasn't picked. He was in 0 lineups, so he's a top contender for what does it matter award. It's fantasy irrelevant.
And here's what we got to do, guys. It's like, how much of it is it one person posts their lineup, and then you look at it, and you're like, oh, I'm picking that guy too. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of times you falling victim to seeing what everyone is choosing and choosing the same guy and just changing up a different position.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It's lazy. It's laziness is what it comes down. People are just copying other people's lineups. Get creative with it. Pick these other people. DK Metcalf is a great option. Calvin Ridley is a great X Factor option for Slick. You know, there's tons of guys that you can pick from. You're going to get a lot more points. Like, why would you pick the same guy every 2 or 3 weeks? It doesn't make any sense. Look for matchups. Look who's playing those bad users or those bad defenses. Who do you think is going to put up a bunch of points? And try to identify something different than just the same guys everybody else picks. But Terrace Marshall Jr., holy shit, 63.7 points is absolutely insane. Tight end rankings. So we had 5 tight ends picked, which is about what I would expect, because tight end is more of a top-heavy position than the others, I think. The top tight end this week was Jacob Harris for the Rams, and he was in 10 lineups, and he was only tight end 11 with 11 points. Brevin Jordan was next. I thought he would be in a lot more lineups. I don't know. I'm surprised he wasn't. He was in 5 lineups. He ended up being tight end 4, which is good. Which is pretty good value. But if we open it up, TJ Hawkinson for the Lions, TBK, and then Travis Kelce. I think that was a sim game with Travis Kelce, because I don't think Nick's been playing his games. Maybe he has. I'm not sure. But you know, you look down the list and you see there's a lot of guys that get points that are not named Brandon Watson and Jacob Harris and Kyle Pitts and Brevin Jordan. So same rule applies here. You know, try to make sure you're varying it up and using these statistics and these insights that we're giving you here in the Journ News Network some thought, so that they can make you a better fantasy player moving forward.
And I will be giving you guys a little tip here. 2 players that did not even show up on this list, all right, that are going to be low-key guys that you even want to choose for your lineups. This week was a bye week for the Ravens, all right? Mr. Q Steen is back, and he has Waller and Mark Andrews. So those are 2 other options that you guys can choose from. Mr. Q Steen, he either runs the ball or he throws it to his tight ends. That's the only thing he does. So, you know, just throwing that out there.
The question is, which tight end will he throw to on each play?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you can't go wrong with either one.
Either one.
They're going to get their receptions. One's going to get 6 catches. The other one's going to get about 8 to 10, you know, and it's just.
But don't forget the 8 passes to J.K. Dobbins. I mean, I don't think we're about to the top of his pass range now. You know, there's a lot of hungry mouths there in Baltimore now. Who's going to get the 12 pass attempts a game? I don't know. The
thing is, he's tanking. Tanking, so he may just be trying to pass, you know, trying to see if he can improve his 4.4 QBR. I don't know. Right,
yeah. We'll see what happens. I don't think he was tanking until after he lost his 7th game of the season. Then he was like, oh, I was tanking. I thought he was trying pretty hard to win that game. But that's just me. Regardless, these are your rankings for the week. Big shout out to KK for having the big winning lineup with 103 points. Nobody violated the Ross rule because we only had 1 week so far, which is nice. But other than that, guys, I will keep it short, keep it brief. We'll wrap this up. If you guys have any comments or suggestions for how we can present the information better, or things you want to see from us, please let me know. You can DM me, you can post it in the chat, tag me, whatever. Other than that, boys and girls, thanks for tuning in. Mikey, any signing off words?
Yeah, we're off to continue the snooze fest because it is still 9 to 6. So I will see you guys
6 to 9 if you're a man of culture.
Oh, 6 to 9. Sorry about that. 6 to 9.
Nice. All right.